Is it already 1 o'clock? Connected to computer audio. Let me find my earbuds.
I wonder if he was letting the antiemetics out of them. Sorry.
Hi, Ruth.
Hi, Rob.
Oh my God, it's so good to see you. It's been so long.
I barely recognized you.
I know. Yeah,
No,
I
it's
was gonna.
okay. It's just
I
been
was
so
gonna.
long. It's been
It's
a long time.
how long do you think it's been?
I
I think
I would
since
guess 30 years.
Marilyn's mom passed.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yes.
And can you catch me up? What are you doing?
Well, I'm retired.
Me too.
Yeah. It's been probably about 7 years now when I think about it. Wow.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just
Uh-huh.
living my life,
Oh.
nothing particularly special or interesting. Have a couple of
And
grandkids.
Gayla,
Yes.
is she married?
Oh yeah.
Yes, that's exciting.
Yes.
And is she local to you?
She's about an hour away, so we see them fairly frequently. And we have 2 boys. She has 2 kids.
Wonderful.
Oh, that's really fun.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And how about yourself?
So it's I'm flashing back to when I brought Jaron over to play and you asked me, am I going back to work as an OT? Do you remember? It was a long time ago.
Yes,
And
I
I
do.
said, and I said, I'm considering it, but I feel like I need a bag of tricks. And then we got into the discussion and you brought the books out and I'm like, yay. Yeah, so I did go back. I worked for 14 years at the state hospital in Bridgewater.
I remember that, yeah.
Loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there until a supervisor came that I could not work with. And
that often
that
happens.
was the end of, yeah. So then I moved on to the Shattuck Department of Mental Health,
Mhm.
and very toxic environment. And then COVID came. And
Yeah.
so I lost 2 patients to it, and we didn't have PPE, and I said, I'm done. I'm retiring. So, and I was already 65.
Yeah.
So that was that. And
Yeah.
both my kids had 3 kids each.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Don't know why.
Do you see them often? Are they local or where are they located?
Yes, they're local. so is in Easton with his family. And he ended up meeting a girl on J Date who grew up on Hampton Road, around the
my.
corner from us. I know. And hi. And Laura's in Brookline, and I think
Uh-huh.
people are joining us now, but I want to catch
Okay.
up with you later.
Okay, all
great.
right. And you're still where you have
I'm
always
still
been?
still on Thorny Lea, yeah.
Uh-huh. Me too. I'm still here. Some things don't
Ernest.
change.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so we'll catch up later.
Yes.
This
Hi,
is-
Donna.
Good morning.
Okay.
You left
Good
where at
morning.
4 a.m.?
Can you guys
Lisa,
hear
where
me?
did you leave from 4 a.m.?
That sound better?
Yes, I think.
Okay. I can hear you now too. Not sure what I was up to. Technology is not my friend today.
Never is my friend.
No. So you're Roberta and you're Ruth.
Yes,
Very nice to meet you. I'm
likewise.
Lisa,
You're Lisa?
hi.
Lisa. Hi. Were
Hi.
you guys here last week? Did you attend last week?
I did.
Oh, you did. Okay. All right.
And I did not. I could not.
Okay, so you have the lay of the land, Roberta, right? and you know it changes.
I'm sorry.
I said you have the lay of the land a little bit then, right?
A little bit, yes. I remember Marilyn did the protection for us. And there was a meditation by
Alona.
Ilona. And
Alona.
I ordered her book as soon as I heard about that. I'm excited. Can't wait to get it.
We've got lots of reading on our list these days. And everywhere I go, people are like, well, you should add this book to your group. You should. I'm like, well, sometimes we just like to talk. So you never know. But I was traveling last week and so I'm behind. But I think I'll be able to get caught up here pretty quick.
We didn't do the book last week. Not really.
Okay.
We just talked.
Okay. And Janet is an iffy today. We'll wait and see. Her son came to visit to see the new baby and got very, very sick. So,
no.
so they're all a little bit worried, but so we'll wait and see. I know.
COVID?
The baby's not sick. No, I think he tested negative.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So I don't know what it is, but you know, my great niece yesterday too, 102 temperature. And then she slept and dizziness and slept for 12 hours, but she's better.
Oh.
Must be a little something going around. So, hi Penny, how are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. How are you?
Here, I'm enjoying our cooler weather. I was on the East Coast for a week with my mom, you know, and it was the 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s. And I was so happy I wore part of my wardrobe I haven't seen for years. So I'm happy that we're overcast, a little gloomy and a little cooler right now.
I agree. It is nice.
It's just been muggy. I don't like the muggy.
It's been muggy and cool and
Yeah,
no fires though. No fires, so we're happy.
no problem. We'll take it.
Yeah.
Roberta, where are you right now? Are you
So I just want to say I go by Robbie because Roberta means I'm in trouble. And I'm in Massachusetts and I'm actually calling from my husband's hospital room. He
Ooh.
broke a couple ribs. We don't know how, but he's in a lot of pain.
Oh,
Um,
sorry to hear that,
yes.
I
Robbie.
got my earbuds, so you won't hear him moaning.
and there's nothing they can really do except for give him some pain meds, right? 'Cause
That's what they're doing to try to get it under control. Yes.
Hmm.
I
Did
had-
did someone hug him too hard?
Yeah.
It wasn't me.
Wasn't you?
I don't know. I mean, there was a fall, and then but the pain didn't start until a few days later. So
Hmm.
we don't know.
Yeah.
That's too bad. Wish
really
him speedy healing.
Mhm.
Thank you. I will tell him.
thoughts. And then Ruth, you have a nice little bug behind you on the window. I don't
Oh,
know
yes.
outside or inside, but he's got long legs. Do you see him, everybody, or is it just me?
I see it.
There he is.
Oh, yeah.
Like a big,
Yes,
mosquito hawk or
big
something.
miss, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I'm sitting in front of a slider door that acts as a deck, so you might see wildlife fly by or birds or bugs.
Well, as you focused in on it and it got bigger, it scared me because it looks really big, but now I see.
Are you in pain, Bear?
Acquaintance shared a story today that that she read about, and this dad went in to help his daughter do some repairs in her bathroom, and so he got to the bathroom and saw this very, very large, what he thought was just a really large spider. So he went and grabbed a cup and put the cup over it, and secured it, and just, went about and did his repair. And then his daughter called him later and said, "Dad, what happened in the bathroom?" And he said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, this cup where you've got this cup that's covering everything." And he said, "Oh, don't worry, it's dead by now because there's no air that can get in there. It's just a big spider or something." And his daughter said, "No, those were my fake eyelashes."
Oh, that's funny.
Oh,
That's
I was
good.
like,
It's-
"Oh,
That is rich.
preserve those forever." Hi, Marilyn.
Hey, I want to
Hey,
Ruth if she didn't already introduce
Hi,
herself.
Mary.
hello.
Hi,
Hello, hello.
and Robbie, Ruth is the other member of the book group we had that started like 35, 37, I don't know how many years ago.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Not,
So-
apparently 1992.
90, oh my, oh, so it's 30 years
92.
ago. Wow. Yeah, we did figure that out.
Wow. Well, I did hear from Idell today, and Idell won't be here. Well, possibly. She's out shopping for a new refrigerator. So, yeah. And we won't see Mary Beth today either. So,
Right.
hi, Marie.
Hi, good
I'm-
morning.
Good morning. I'm a little behind on my reading, so I'm going to be maybe not able to contribute much.
Oh,
except for my
I think we're all a little behind from the last 2 weeks.
Okay. What's going on with your puppy in the back?
Oh, Charlotte had surgery last Wednesday, and she's a lot better today. She's been a cranky girl. She had 3 cysts removed and then 3 teeth removed. So,
Poor thing.
Wow.
poor baby.
so, but she's a senior dog, so she's starting to have her little issues.
She's looking a little grumpy still.
Yeah, she is. She is, because she's got to wear that donut, And she doesn't like it.
Oh, that's
And I
right.
tell her it's better than the cone. So,
The lampshade, yeah.
yeah, which they keep, So, yeah, it's been challenging because she keeps wanting to scratch the stitches that they gave. She did that twice already and was bleeding all over the place. And so I try to keep it on. So I give her a break when she eats.
Yeah, she looks like she's gonna hold a grudge. So
Yeah.
And she does. She comes over and gives me this. She stares me down, and I know. I said, I know. You just have to be patient.
I guess we would all feel that same way too if we had a cone around our head like that.
But that one's really comfy comparing to the regular one.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
plastic one. So when you're going through the airport, and I don't know, maybe I'm being judgmental, but people have those little collar things that they wear on the airplane, which is great. But then they just wear them through the airport like a necklace or something. I'm like, can't be it. It looks just silly to have it look like you look like the dog.
Yeah, but if you don't do that, then you have to carry it along with everything else you have to carry.
That's what I'm guessing.
Complicated. It can get complicated.
I traveled with my mom last week, which was in itself a challenge, but she's just all about organizing her suitcase nonstop. And every time we'd get home from her, she'd be organizing her suitcase, and she has like a soft-sided carry-on. Oh, anyway, we got her all situated, and she went to some store and bought some maple syrup, really cute maple syrup that they said was good to check your bag in. And so she had 4 little 5-ounce bottles, the shape of a maple leaf. They were really cute. And so at the first flight, they confiscated 2. And the second flight, they confiscated the other 2. So she showed up without any maple syrup. So I don't think she was happy about that.
The pictures were gorgeous.
It was, I did the videos because my mom wanted to remember the trip. And normally I would have just posted a bunch of pictures, but teaching her how to do Facebook and Instagram was not worth the challenge of me sitting for hours creating videos. So I created the videos for my mom, and I'm happy to look back at them. I think I captured some of the fun stuff we did. So it was fun.
Nice.
Yeah, it was fun. But Booth Harbor, Booth Bays, whatever.
Booth Bay Harbor.
So we're driving in the car, and I'm driving, and we're on a 2-lane highway going down to this botanical gardens. And all of a sudden my mom screams and grabs me, Lisa, like that, scares me. I swerve into oncoming traffic.
Oh,
And evidently there was a deer. I just saw the tail end of the deer because she grabbed me, and I had to concentrate on the people I was looking face to face with. And the deer came and just stopped in front of the car. And then in one jump, that picture where the deer is flying in the air? It's exactly what they look like. He took off at an angle like this that went straight like 6 feet up in the air. I couldn't believe it. So that was all I saw of it, because the rest was me apologizing to the people I almost hit head on.
Jeez.
And we had to travel with a new rule: no touching the driver. But it was fun. New England is beautiful. So, and I did have a dinner in Boston. We stayed in Boston our last night. So I did get to walk around there a little bit. So it was nice.
Well, I'm glad it wasn't anything worse.
No, well,
No,
no, it wasn't.
I think we've all had those experiences of close calls. I know I certainly have. I'm in New England as well, where deer will just come flying out of the woods. And,
Yeah.
I had one cross about a foot in front of my car, and I said to the powers that be, thank you, because, had I been a foot further down the road, it would have been awful. It would
Yeah.
have been a collision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all
So,
this to watch out for moose. I was like, where's the moose? I
mhm.
was so excited, but then I thought, God, if she grabs me and there's a moose in front of me. But yeah. Hi, Sita. It's nice to see you.
Good to see everybody.
Okay.
Sophia, how are you? Oh, you're on mute. It's okay.
yes. Yeah, I'm good. Everything's good. Happy to see everybody. Here's the news of the day. I am no longer called Diagnostics Pad, which I was up until this point. I have just learned a new skill.
Well, it's just nice to say to
Good for
It's nice
you.
to see your name.
It's small, but I'll take it.
It's a little win-win. How's your kitty doing, Sophia?
Oh, I love you for asking that. Mary Beth is sick of hearing about it. And I need a new victim. Oh, I don't know. He's eaten something he's this weekend was the first weekend he hasn't eaten something since the beginning of time, clothing wise or plastic wise or cardboard wise or silicone wise. So, I'm trying different things, behavioral things, I think I've got this under control. So he obviously will eat something today. So
Yes.
I'll keep you posted.
And it's with cats, it's not like you just keep it off the floor because they can get into anything.
You know, my other cat previously ate plastic, which was made my house very tidy. There was never any plastic bags just tossed around, right? This cat, there's nothing he doesn't eat. So it's like, you're right. It's like my vanity has to be clear. You know, but I'm thinking he's only a year old. What do you think, Marilyn? You're an expert. You think he'll grow out of it?
Oh,
It's hard to say because I'm thinking of Basil. We have the mama cat and the two babies, and the babies are what, like 9 years old already. Basil will lay there and chew on the side of the refrigerator. He'll just gnaw on anything, metal, wood, anything. It has gotten better. He's a wire chewer. Is yours a wire chewer? Because that's tough. You have to cover
Ooh.
every wire in the
Oh,
house.
no, that's like bunny rabbits in your house, you
Yeah.
know, but no, he does eat wood and he'll chew on a metal thing, you know.
Was he bottle fed? Because I know that
He's living with his mother at my house. He's
Oh,
never,
well, it's behavioral.
Well, I think that they were goats in their past life, and that's
that
why
it?
they're
There you
eating
go.
everything.
well, I'm happy to take any input in because I'm at the end of my rope. I have no idea. I'm short of keeping him in a chicken coop in my living room. I'm
I
not sure.
read that plastic bags are made with something from fish and that they
I
can.
read cornmeal.
Oh,
I read
Really?
cornmeal.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
some-
so it's really interesting. They might actually be attracted to some of the smells.
Yeah, I don't know. The other possibility is I see all these lovely faces and you all need a cat. Look. Oh, see how Donna smiled and laughed? See how much happiness a cat will bring into your life?
Well,
And,
most of us have them.
okay, given that, I just remembered I was gonna remember to ask you guys something. It's totally off point, so forgive me, but I'm actually trying to place a beautiful calico kitten, female, you know, so they're female. Absolutely beautiful. I should have posted the picture, and it was abandoned on a front porch. And it was going to a Montessori school where it would be an outside ratter, and I put my foot down and I said, it's like a little kitten, you're gonna put it in the shed outside. So if anybody is interested, let me know, or know somebody. I'm happy to post the picture someplace.
okay. Yeah, well, why don't you send an email to me with the picture, and I'll send it out to the group.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Lisa.
Absolutely. It's bound to be somebody. And Sita said she'd like it.
where do you live, Sophia?
I live in San Marcos, but the kitty has to be picked up, but my neighbor will go and do that. So she lives next to me, so San Marcos.
About a month ago, I was wanting a kitten. So I'll contemplate it.
Well, look at the picture and ask. I'm happy to put you in touch with Marisa, my neighbor.
Okay.
And it's her cousin who has it, and it's just so cute. And why would you want it to go to a Montessori? Not you, but why would one want it to go to a Montessori school where it lives outside and gets handled by little children and eats rats? I mean, it's just not right.
It's so interesting. Last night, Edgar, my soul cat, we have a lot of cats and a lot of them have incarnated and come back in. They've been with us before. The one that I'm really close to, Edgar, he's been coming around. When I was at Idel, when Harry had COVID, I could feel him leaning against me. And last night he came in and he said, well, I'm not ready to come back yet, but when I do, and he showed me he wants to look pretty much what he's looked like a couple of other times. Now I know the timing so that I don't jump and go, oh yeah, maybe that's him. I'll take him. I think
He
that would
didn't.
be a really nice addition, Sita, if that feels right, you know?
She's so fuzzy and she has like bluish eyes, and you know those calico cats are just.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted it. And my friend Tomas, who has 2 cats and like a teeny tiny apartment, he's the best dad ever. And he's like, don't tell me about it. Cause he's like, good, because he couldn't bear the thought of the cat like going to some terrible place, you know?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, Marie, where do you think we left off last?
Well, we are, let me see. Chapter 7, places we go with others.
Okay.
So
So, and before, because I'll have Marilyn do the protection, we won't have a meditation today, but Marilyn, the chapter 7 is about compassion and empathy. And so if something inspires you to give us some inspiring words, that would be great. And do you feel like you want to protect us now?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't we do our protection and we'll get started?
All righty, get comfy. Feet is on the floor, palms up, take a deep breath. And just hear and feel and sense whatever's going on around you. And feel your shoulders go down. We clothe ourselves in a robe of light composed of the love, the power, and the wisdom of divine consciousness. We wear it not only for our own protection, but also so that those who see it or come in contact with it will be drawn to divine and healed. Take a breath. Notice the energy in your gut. Notice the energy in your chest. Divine, let your light surround us. Let it permeate us. Let it fill us up and emanate from us and reflect back to each other and to divine, and help us always remember that we are divine consciousness and we are the light. Notice the energy in the chest and take another breath. And notice how easy it is to pick up on other people's pain. How we're all connected. How our love for each other helps us to understand and really use that old adage, joy is multiplied and troubles are divided when we share. Take a deep breath and know that we can help others and still be surrounded in light and sharing that light. And the best thing we can do is to just be. Jump in whenever we'd like to, but know that our presence raises the vibration and brings healing for all around us, including ourselves. And take a deep breath, and there it is.
Robbie, I just muted you during so I'm just, you can just hit unmute. I just muted you during the meditation just because it was there was a little background noise, but you're good
Oh,
now.
I'm sorry.
That's
Okay.
your fault. You couldn't hear it. So, and it was probably only me that could hear it, but so you're back on. Okay, great.
Thank you.
So, Marie,
Yes.
got a room full of empaths here. So how can we learn from this chapter?
Actually, because I'm in the therapy profession, so it talked to me quite a bit. Marilyn knows that my skill set of being an empath came at a great price. I got really sick from feeling everything. So there's a couple of things on the empathy piece that I wanted to give you the definition that she came up with through all her research. And she defines it as compassion is the daily practice of recognizing and accepting our shared humanity so that we treat ourselves and others with loving kindness and we take action in the face of suffering. But it doesn't mean you walk in their shoes.
Right.
And it does give you insight in terms of how they're feeling, but it's learning to not take it on. And that was one of the greatest lessons I had to learn, because as an empath, I literally feel, I'm one of those that feels everything that's going on in their body before they even walk into the room. And I didn't learn how to let go of those things. after sessions. And so after I got super sick, I learned to start paying attention to that and to just let go, just cut off when I'm done with session. But it is an incredible tool because others, you don't have to give them anything other than your presence. When someone is in a hard or a difficult place or having some kind of a conflict, they don't need you to step in and fix it, because being empathic is not about stepping in and fixing it. It's about being present. It's about, I hear you, I see you, and I feel your pain, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're taking it on or that you have to do something to fix it. And many a times people kind of confuse that. They kind of think, oh, I feel really bad, let me step in and try to fix it. And that's the way I look at it now, is that when we try to step in and fix something, sometimes we get in the way of the learning. So yes, there are moments where you do have to step in and, you know, be a human being and help another. But there's other times where there's a lesson there that needs to be learned. And the greatest gift you can give them is your compassion of being present with them. And I just say compassion, which actually goes directly with empathy. And compassion is a form of love. Last week, we talked about it briefly. Compassion stems from love, and sympathy stems from fear. So part of when you show up with somebody, you're compassionate, you're giving them a piece of your love. And so it's a big deal. Anyway, so she defined 2 types of empathy: the cognitive empathy, which I employ quite often, and then also the ooh.
What? Do you need something?
Oh,
Sorry.
no
Okay.
worries.
Excuse me, I need to check on something.
Sure. Marie. Marie.
Yes.
So, you know, going back to what you were saying in regards to being present, you know, I had a bad experience with a therapist who was unhappy that I was leaving my husband.
Mm.
And I went after that bad therapy session to my nice therapist and talked to her. And she said, it is the most difficult thing to sit in that chair and not, you know, put yourself in the position of the person sitting opposite you. And she said, some people are just better at it than others. And obviously I never went back to the bad therapist again. But I thought that has resonated with me, and we've been divorced 23 years and I still think about it. How that person, so when you were talking about that, especially as a therapist, it has to be the most difficult thing to sometimes not want to jump in and say, oh my God, that happened to me, or oh my God, you know, I know exactly what you mean, or, you know, so as far as being compassionate.
Yeah. Before I started this journey of working with people at this level, I was in HR. So I was used to just seeing the big picture, seeing the problem, and just delegating and telling people how to fix things without, you know, having to take it on and just listen. And when I switched roles, I thought it would be really difficult. And what I noticed is that I became a better listener, and the judgment went out the door. Because when you show up there, it's not there. There's no need to judge. And it's just the love that you are sharing that oozes out of you. For me, I mean, I've had other clients that have come in that have been traumatized by other therapists. And the difference was, I think, is in terms of what I've heard, is that these other therapists don't know how to be empathetic. In our field, we call it the empathic attunement. Carl Rogers spoke about it quite often in terms of, it doesn't matter what type of therapy you do, if you are connected empathically with that person feels like they've been got, they've been understood, and they've been heard. So in terms of sharing, what I find oftentimes is that if I experience something similar as something my client brings, I'll share my personal journey to help them. But I don't just share it to share it. There's always a reason. If I'm going to share something, I always have a reason if it's going to be for their better good. Otherwise, I don't share it. So, but it really just comes down to just showing up and listening, being a good listener, less talking and more listening. And as we call it, active listening. So I think that's compassion and empathy really go hand in hand, because when you are empathic with somebody, you are sharing a piece of you. You're sharing your love. You're extending it out. And that's really palpable.
So when you talk about being present, which, you know, I had that conversation with my mom because she's always looking ahead. She's always worried about this and worried about that. And I told her, just be present in this moment. And it was lost on her. So when you're talking about that, being present is kind of a hard concept, you know, because we're all used to.
Oh, hold on.
But you know, just to go on from that, where we operate with so many distractions that it has to be. I mentally have to say to myself, be present right now. It's not as if it's ritual, and it's not as if it's you know, another sense. It's just something reminding myself all the time. And so that's kind of it's a concept to me that I think tackles all the rest of this.
Yeah.
Passion.
Well, you know, being present is not only the monks seem to be better at it than we do, I think, you know, where they can be present, but being, especially when somebody's in conflict, I think it's easier for us to be right there with the person, hearing what they're saying. But if it's something that you don't want to deal with, yeah, it's easy to pull out and not be, you know, present with the person. But being present is a practice. I mean, we cannot be present 100% of the time. It really is a practice. And I think that's part of the mindfulness that we're really big on today, is that the more time you spend in the present, the more awareness and, you know what, also gratitude stems out of that. There is an enormous amount of gratitude that stems when you're present. And that comes out of the mindful-based stress reduction, where what's his name? Kabat-Zinn, or is it Zabit?
John Kabat-Zinn.
Yeah. He began to use this methodology when he came back from a trip that he had done in I think it was Asia. Can't remember exactly where. And he began to implement it. And one of the things that he noticed is that people were able to localize where they were feeling pain. So it wasn't generalized to all their body. And the other thing was that gratitude was stemming out of being mindful. And it's because you're not judging. You're just bringing your mind back into the present moment without judging that. So you're letting go of those things. And you begin to look at people through a very different lens as a result of that. And that was one of the things that I really noticed, is that I always practice gratitude in terms of writing in my journal what I'm grateful for. But after practicing mindfulness, it's a whole different thing when you get to practice it that way, because it allows you to be more present with the person, but it also brings a lot more gratitude. And what that gratitude is behind it is all that love. You know, even though you're not related, you can have love and compassion for another person.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. So for the new ladies, we studied a book back in the long time ago about the fact that so many of us are empaths, and you know, how do we manage that without taking on all the woes of the world? And it was so helpful, because first of all, I think there were people in our group that didn't realize that they were empaths, and you know, and all of a sudden they felt like this. Oh gosh, now I don't even remember the name of the book. Maybe you
Was it Judith Orloff's book?
No, it's Anita Moorjani. I think it's The New Strong.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was so when I'm going to tell you, Marie, when I started this chapter, I thought, because the rest of this book has taken the definitions of words that I've known to mean one thing and flipped it on its head, or on its ass, because we're all adults here. And that's been a struggle for me. It's like, oh my gosh, you've taken this word that I've always related to as being a positive, and now it's a negative, as far as this book's concerned. So I went into this chapter thinking the same thing. Oh, now what are they going to tell me? That compassion is, whatever, a negative. So I'm kind of happy that this chapter is moving along in a positive way.
Well, I think what I want to do is kind of define a little bit more, because it talks also about sympathy and pity, which those are the last things that you want to, convey to somebody, because sympathy and pity stem from fear. Having compassion stems from love. Having empathy stems from love, which is a whole different concept, because you're coming from a place of love. And sympathy and pity stems from fear. Whatever that fear is for you, it stems from there. Does that make sense?
It does. I've
Yes.
always looked at pity as being, oh, Sita disagrees with me. Sita, would you like
You know what? You're giving more depth to the definition than I have ever thought of. But I have contemplated compassion heavy duty now for the last 7 years, since I'm writing a whole book on it. And I was like, okay, what is really true compassion? And pity, of course, never came into it. Pity, nobody, well, I can't say nobody, we can't assume anything, right? But I think the majority of the people do not want somebody to pity them, okay?
Yep.
But I can say that, especially maybe the people that come to me for readings or counseling, or my own family or my own drama queen, very, very Latina. Over the years, I came to realize that sympathy, maybe we can differentiate sympathy with love and sympathy with pity. Like, nobody wants sympathy with pity. But to me, and what I have seen the definition of, is when somebody goes into their woeful story and we go, ay, I get lástima, that's just terrible. And go into that whole segment of it and say, you know what, let me tell you about my story. And then we sit there and we both cry and cry and cry. And that is really heartfelt. And somebody else goes, wow, thank you so much. And then the door opens then to the next step. Then we can go to the empathy. Does that make a little bit more sense for us Latinas?
Yeah, but you know what, Sita, for the non-Latina here, I would say that description rather fits under compassion than sympathy. Because I would look at
I do, that's what I'm saying. I really wanted to define compassion. And to me, that kind of sympathy comes under compassion. It's when you're literally feeling their story and you can take it on. And if you leave a person in their depth of their woeful story, they may not know how to get out of it.
Sure.
When I went through separation, that's what my family did to me big time. And they didn't help me because they didn't know the language of empathy. And when you learn the language of empathy, you're using the words that empowers a person rather than keeps them in their woeful pittiness.
Right. So Marie, in this book, then, would you venture to say that compassion and empathy, as the way this author is presenting it, is the opposite of sympathy and pity?
Yes. In fact, in the book, she goes on to say that pity and sympathy are cousins, but the near enemies of compassion. So if you were to put it on a spectrum, I guess, you would say that on one side you have compassion, on the other side you would have sympathy. So, Marilyn?
Yeah, just an interesting thought. Before Sita talked, I was actually thinking about how we might see a situation or hear a situation and we get a knee-jerk reaction of that pang, oy, that same thing that Sita was saying, and I know I was brought up with, oh, there, but for the grace of God, go I. And I think that when we have that knee-jerk reaction, it hits a universality with us. Maybe we've been there, maybe we haven't, but it's human. I think it's really human to identify in a very reactive way and almost fear-based. It can be, but I think that's just a process that it's interesting because when Sita was talking about it, I thought, oh, that's exactly what I was thinking too about. It's like a sliding scale. I really agree with pity and all of these things and the semantics, they do matter. And being present is really, just the most important thing you can do. But I think sometimes those immediate reactions that you don't even know how to identify, maybe they're not the healthiest in terms of, oh, I should be this way. I think it opens the door to we're one, if somebody else is hurting, like it hurts, And so it's interesting with the way Sita was putting it was further than what I would have liked to be together. But I kind of see that. And I've really spent time, I was taught to make an assumption about what people need and try and fix it. So it wasn't easy for me to try and, I thought it took me a long time to realize that when people were just complaining, it was true and honest, I wasn't helping them by having it go on and on and on. So I learned some boundaries in terms of whether or not it's healthy, but who am I to judge that? But is it something they're going through trying to get here or just wanting to wallow here, in which case I don't want to enable. It's interesting because I go back to just our protection and intention that we do all the time and surrounding us in light and asking that everything and everyone that comes in contact with us has the invitation to be drawn to light. Since I do that a lot more, it isn't, like 100%, but a lot of people who are really just wanting to and stay in that place aren't seeking me out so much, or maybe I've changed and I can be really, really present to higher vibration. And I guess if you do the mantra or just focus on the intention, you don't have to, I don't want my brain to do it because I can't figure out if somebody is so desperate and it just sounds to me like whatever, I want to energetically be present because, when I'm in a mood, it's, you're not so clear. But I think by doing that intention of surrounding us with light and emanating that light so that it encompasses everybody, it's going to start helping them, of course, just by our presence, which is what you're talking about to begin with. That's the basic. But I really see what Sita's saying and that whole thing about, because it is human nature, but you don't live in there. And of course, I've lived in there a lot, as you know. So it's interesting to clarify it. It's a really important thing we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, in the book, she actually talks about it. It's the empathy misses. I think she listed 8 of them. The first one is sympathy versus empathy, where you say, oh, I feel sorry for you. Nobody wants to know, hurry here, I feel sorry for you, right? Number 2 is the judgment. It's that you should feel shame, or you should this, or you should that. Number 3 is disappointment. You've let me down. Number 4 is discharging discomfort with blame. This feels terrible. Who can we blame? You, right? Number 5 is minimize or avoid, which is a lot of the times that's where people get stuck, where they're trying to minimize it or just avoid it because it's uncomfortable. Number 6 is comparing or competing. Okay. Number 7 is speaking truth to power. The example she said is don't upset people or make them uncomfortable, right? And then number 8 is advice giving and problem solving. People don't want to be fixed. They just want to know that you're holding the space for them, that they can be heard. And you had earlier, you mentioned boundaries, Marilyn, and this is also part of when you have empathy, it's also about boundaries, honoring those boundaries so that you're not taking on what's not course.
That's
Can I
right.
ask something, Marie?
Yes.
I actually did, and maybe one of you is familiar with this, but I looked at this beginning of a workshop for death doulas or end of life doulas. And I was really very interested. I sat through the informational part, but by the time she got to the end of the presentation, and she's a very well qualified, very credible person, and it's really something that really spoke to me. I couldn't, it's like, it was really, it was talking boundaries and talking, like I was engulfed by the feelings, my personal feelings related to death. And I thought, how can this be done? How do you get past the personal and seeing everything as being related to you and your experience and how it would feel for you, and be able to help other people,
Yeah. So what's the question? It's like, how do you
How
separate?
how do you set that aside? And that's true for Marilyn. Marilyn's kind of talking about that already.
No.
It's like,
But that's just it, that when you have empathy for someone, is that you are relating at some level, even though you haven't experienced it yourself. And that relating is what makes the person feel safe and understood and heard.
And validated.
And validated, exactly. Because I specialize in trauma, and people bring me serious trauma, and I may not have experienced anything of what they bring me into my session, but I can certainly relate to their emotional pain. And as an empath, I feel it, right? And then and I always have the intention, whenever I start the day that I'm going to be seeing people, my intention always starts to let me hear that which is not spoken. And it always shows up, for the person. And even though they're saying the words, I'm understanding really what they're trying to tell me. And so, but that's because I'm connected with them empathically. I'm feeling them and I'm validating them, but I don't necessarily walk in their shoes, but I get their pain.
It's interesting because, it's with channeling. I use my body as a template, and the more years I channel, the less I'm relying on other senses, and it's more through the body. And it's interesting because, a lot of us are in a profession to heal and to offer. And I think that when you're that close, I wonder, as therapists, without really thinking about it, you're still downloading on a physical level, of course, whether or not you physically have been in their shoes or not. I notice with channeling, I don't trans-channel, I stay present, that the human me is always standing there, kind of being, just present, and deciphering, translating. But the human me is always back there and present. It's interesting. We can separate it, and yet we can't. We're downloading, and there's something as a therapist that is happening inside you that's so beyond book learning, that's instinct. That's the prayer that you put out. It's the intention. So having it come through you, I just got a flash that for us, whether you're a therapist or not, I think just the group of us in whatever situation we're in, it literally comes through us, but we're still present. And I think that discernment is what could give an offering. But the person behind it, the person who's present, has to be careful, like you said, to not fix. And I do something similar. I really love what you say about hearing, and part of the mantra I do before channeling is, help me to accept what does come in, help me to accept what does not come in. Because the eureka moment could be 10 minutes later and so much more powerful than my voice. So it's really holding the space for the highest good. And then figuring out in the situation, the discernment of your presence is the offering, your energy and space is the offering. But again, we're in a different position. We kind of can do things or know things, and figuring out when it's appropriate. One of the biggest things for me is, like, I'll jump right into channeling, and a couple of times I'll get a tap and go, no, no, that isn't what they're looking for here. It's really okay. And I make that assumption because that's about me, but it isn't always about them. Though often it is. It's very interesting. How do you take off your shoes when you're not doing what you do? You always do it, but it's the presence of us behind whatever it is. And I think you're right. It's all about the intention.
Yeah, absolutely the intention. And in terms of, it's interesting because I've noticed when I'm really connected to the person empathically, literally I can feel the download. It's that knowingness. And I feel myself outside to the, at the side, and literally the information's just flowing through me. And then, all of a sudden it's broken and they'll say, can you repeat that? And I'll say, I can't because I have no, it wasn't of me. It was something greater than me that was helping that person. And that happens quite often in my sessions. And so I never thought of it as channeling until Marilyn had pointed it out to me.
I think we do it all the time wherever we go. And if we're fortunate enough to be in a position that you've worked so hard for it to be a therapist, then you can gift it. But I think we do that. I think that's kind of who we are, or our basic intention, So yeah, it's really amazing, isn't it? And it's great fun and it's joyful,
Yeah, but I do think that with all of this, the boundaries that's the number one thing that I always teach is boundaries. And she has a quote in the book by Prentice Hemphill: boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously.
I love that.
Right. And it's true because I always think about children. Children know they're loved and cared for through the boundaries that we set for them. Every day they wake up and test them, and every day it's up to us to reinforce them. So yes, boundaries are incredibly important across the board.
Could you repeat that? I want to write it down.
Sure. Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously.
Boundaries are the distance in which. Okay, thank you.
Hey, that's a whole different question, right?
If you haven't noticed, boundaries is a big issue for me. I've always considered being empathic as a blessing and a curse, because I have a hard time not taking things home with me. So, and when I was home with COVID, I was binge watching CNN, and that was horrible. So I find that avoiding, keeping that distance between all of the troubles of the world and stuff that's out of my control, other than just sending light to wherever it needs to go, and asking for it to be for the best and highest good of me and all beings everywhere. So that's where I'm at.
I absolutely can relate to what you're saying about the news. I mean, I worked in the therapy capacity for many, many years, and like you, I'm retired, but it's the news. Sometimes my heart just goes out to these people and their situations, and I'm so open, and I have to really, like you're saying, everybody's saying, set those boundaries and saying, I'm only going to let it in so far, and then it will stop. Then it stops here, because otherwise, what good are any of us to the world or the people we serve or anyone, our families? If we're too empathic, then we are a mess.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know, Marie, maybe that's something that we discuss down the road. I mean, just a little workshop on, how to strengthen our boundaries.
Yeah. Actually, I'm doing a group. I think it's in a couple of weeks. I'm starting a group. It's still part of the series of Evolving Me, and it's on boundaries and communication.
Good one.
I think about boundaries. I feel guilty sometimes setting up boundaries. I feel that if I establish a boundary and prevent somebody from coming to me with all their needs, I feel bad about that. And I think it would be really helpful to feel okay about.
Yeah. So
boundaries.
that actually takes you back to the 4 agreements. That's the judge in you, right? Feeling like you have to feel guilty. And that's part of the boundary setting, is when you're impeccable with your word, you're not feeling the guilt. You're owning who you are and where you are and what you're willing to do and not do.
Those darn 4 agreements are going to nip me in the butt for the rest of my life.
Because remember, in the first agreement, being impeccable with your word, it points out the judge and the critic, though the judge and the victim.
Right.
Under the judge falls the critic, and those 2 main archetypes, there's lots of archetypes, but those 2 main archetypes are the ones that are constantly in our minds. And so when you are working at being impeccable with your word, because remember, the 4th agreement, you're doing your best at any given moment. You're not asked to go above, you're not asked to go below, you're just being asked to do your best at any given moment. But it doesn't include the judge or the victim. It's just you showing up as you.
Right. I'm going to understand and get that concept one day. Don't you worry about it.
So I have a question that has to do with the sort of helper personality that an empathic person, well, I'm talking about myself. I just feel like it's my role to help people. And sometimes I guess I wonder, am I helping someone out of compassion, or am I helping them to make myself feel better? And that would be ego. And I don't know.
What I can tell you is you just have to ask the question, is this my ego or is this my higher self? And your ego, 99.9% of the time will say, it's me. The moment it says it's me, you know that you're not meant to be stepping in. Usually for me, when I do something for someone, I really check into my heart. Is this what my heart truly wants to do?
Mhm.
And if I feel it, then I do it, because that's the blessing. But if I don't feel compelled and it's not coming from my heart, I don't do it, because I know there is no blessing for the person receiving it, nor for me. And that again is a boundary.
Boundaries, these darn boundaries.
You know what's interesting to me, guys? Everybody here seems to have this empathic streak running through them. So all the questions and really, and the input is all about, how do I manage it? Kind of like, how do I use it, but in a good way, and I don't know if it has any relevancy for us, but I have to say, a lot of people don't have that issue.
Mhm.
And their way of exercising a boundary is to do an about face and walk away. That's how they feel they are exercising self, protection. And that's the other end of the spectrum. And there are plenty of people who will just turn around in the face of someone else's needs and just abandon them.
Mhm.
And, that is also a very real thing, which is.
Yeah. But if you notice in the book, she talks about the cognitive empath, right? Because you're also employing the mind through this process. And so you have to work also from the rationale. You're looking at the evidence before you. And yes, you're feeling it also with your heart and your gut, but you also employ your mind, because the 3 work together. And each one of you, each part is giving you some information. And the cognitive piece is also important. I'm science-based. I started off that way, and my clients definitely have sent me a different path. But I've always employed my mind, and then I've allowed my heart and my gut. Eventually, it was my gut that was doing most of the processing for me, which is what caused me to get so sick. But as an empaths, we also have that cognitive piece. And when we want to help, it's because we don't want to step in and fix it. We just want to show up for the person.
Before I forget, Sophia, when Betty rejoins us, she did a talk called Death Cafe. Is that right, Marilyn? Was it called Death Cafe? And the title itself was a little bit off-putting. However, what it was about the transition, people transitioning at death, because that's what she does. And not necessarily about the person that's leaving, but about all the people that are left behind. And I think it would be worth revisiting that again when she gets a free Monday. If you guys would be interested, I'd have her do that again, because it was really quite lovely. It gives you a whole different perspective, probably what you were experiencing when you were, the death doula.
Yeah.
So, I'd reach out and ask her to join us one day and do that. So, Marie, next week is humiliation and embarrassment.
Oh, goody.
That sounds pleasant.
We should all start that session with our most embarrassing moment and then see where it goes from there.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good one. Before we close, she does have at the very end of the chapter comparative suffering. And for me, this one hits close to home because I specialize in trauma. And I oftentimes have people come in that have experienced trauma, but minimize it because they say, well, so-and-so in my family experienced this and their trauma was much worse than mine. And the way I look at it is that trauma is trauma. It doesn't matter, it's subjective to each person, but whoever is going through a traumatic experience, it's their experience and they have a right to be heard and supported, regardless of if it's minimal or not. A great example, many years ago, I had this woman who had trauma because her father, as a little girl, didn't show up to her birthday party. As a result of that, she had a lot of issues in relationships. But it stemmed from her dad not showing up to her birthday party. I can't judge that. That's her. I can't compare that to somebody else who might have had a worse experience. To her, that was trauma.
Right.
And so we honor that. So the comparative suffering is, oh, but so-and-so got it so much worse than me. No, if you're experiencing the hurt and the pain and the conflict of all of that, you have a right to be heard. You have a right to be validated. It's not about, somebody else suffering more than me.
It's kind of like what Sita said, where she's all feet in when somebody, in her life is having, problem, and she wants to embrace it. Whoops, who did we lose? Wants to embrace it and, and be part of it and support it. So yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, I'm guilty of that sometimes, where I look at somebody and think, oh, that's, if you think that's a problem, let me tell you my problems.
Yeah. Well, but I was raised with that because my grandmother, when she would sit down and feed all four of us kids, and my siblings were rather finicky about food, and she would say, you need to finish everything on that plate because there's children in Africa that are not eating. So we were raised with that guilt, right? That comparative suffering. And we all have it in our system somewhere. We've been taught it somewhere along the way.
My children were in India.
China. Wasn't doing well then. Marie, I want to say you were talking about comparing, and I've had the privilege of working, of knowing a lot of people through a group that a chronic pain group, and that's the thing people do. They think they dismiss their own pain. It's like, oh, that person lost a limb. I only lost a kitten. How can we, but and as I explain to people frequently, because people don't get this concept, it's like, you can't judge other people. To them, not getting a date to the prom could have been as traumatizing as whatever you experience, and trying to compare people's pain is pointless because it's their pain.
Or make assumptions. Because with me, this last year has been incredible change in my life. I'm, learning to be in a different way. But when I'm asked about things, they're like, oh, but you're so confident and you're so strong. And that's an assumption. I always say, you know what, I might be confident, I might be strong, but even strong people need to be supported. You just can't make the assumption.
Marie, I had somebody, I was on the phone, you guys, with my cousin who I have seen twice in our entire lives, and he's like 60 years old, okay? But I talk to him all the time. He lives in New Jersey, thanks to COVID, okay? All these people I never talked to before. And he said, how do you see yourself? This is a question he asked me, which is an interesting guy question, like, wow, all right. And then how do you see my sisters? Okay, I know his sister's a little bit better. He said, well, I hear you're really strong. That's what I get. I hear you're really strong. And I thought, oh, that's weird. I don't feel really strong. Is that why I don't get any support? Am I walking around looking really strong? That assumptive thing,
Yeah.
Like you're capable and you can handle it all by yourself.
Yeah. So there's an assumption.
There is an assumption in that. And so I think it's hurtful for those that are going through something and they might need that support, but because they assume that person is strong and confident, that it's okay. And I always use the example of Athena's temple. There is a building in her place that it's all statues of women holding up the temple. Athena's a strong intellectual woman, but yet she needed all of these other women to help uphold the building. And she's a woman of strength, but she also needed support.
Oh, that's a good place. That's a good place. Here we are supporting each other, right?
Yep. What were you going to say, Sita?
Well, I'd really like to share a story on this because this is really heavy duty. And I think that everybody here probably, maybe I want to use the word, gets accused of being very strong and should be able to handle it all. And this is such a common thing. And for men too, they don't have any emotional stuff going on. They should be able to handle it. Look at how confident he looks. And what I really resonated with some of Marshall Rosenberg's work on nonviolent communication is to recognize the point that when somebody says something, no matter how crazy it is, if they are saying it to you, they're expecting some kind of response, which I didn't totally realize that. But when they're saying something heavy duty, it's like, how in the world am I supposed to respond to this? So this is the story. When my son died, a friend of mine who's a very close friend still to this day said this other lady wanted to take us out to lunch, and she's feeling really heartfelt about me losing my son. And this lady I admired a lot, and maybe I've told this story before. She ended up raising 4 children on her own. And one of them was even left literally on her doorstep. But anyway, so I always looked at her, and she seems to be very spiritual. I always thought of her as a very loving, compassionate person. So when we go out to lunch, I mean, we're talking about within 30, 60 days of my son dying. We're sitting there at lunch and she brings me a present, which was an odd present, a medical bag, leather bag that she had used. And she thought maybe I would like it as a healer. And she had all of these items in it. But anyway, she proceeded to tell me about each one of her children. And she brought out photographs. She brought out her phone and she's showing me photographs of all of her children and how wonderful they're doing. And a couple of grandchildren. And I'm just sitting there trying to figure out how this is supposed to be consoling me.
Yeah.
Right? I'm saying people really can just be saying the craziest things, and they're thinking we're real strong, or whatever they're thinking of us, that they think we have the capacity to hear this. And so I was, of course, speechless. I had no way of responding. I was just frozen. But now that I have been studying true, deep compassion and how to offer that, I know how I would have responded. And I would have responded with letting her know what I was feeling, and then throwing back the empathy, going back and forth. It is hard, what I'm trying to say, to communicate to people. It can be really, really hard to communicate to these people. But immediately, if I had, if it was today and I had been practicing everything, I would be literally saying, so are you afraid that you're going to lose one of your children?
Yeah.
Are you afraid one of them are going to die? But then, of course, it would become totally about her, which she was making the afternoon about her anyway.
Yeah.
There was no consoling me. So that, as a counselor, therapist, best friend, whatever you want to call, can be really heavy duty sometimes. Like sometimes I do not want to be your therapist, okay? I just want to be a friend and I need some consoling. How do I ask for that? But there is a way to ask for that in a very obliging and compassionate manner. And we do that by learning exactly to have the awareness of what the heck is going on presented here and how I'm reacting to it. It's like my heart started beating so fast when she's showing me these pictures. I mean, there was a part of me that just wanted to start crying my head off.
Oh, Sita, that was just cruel. I mean, it wasn't her intention, but the result
Exactly.
was just
That's
cruel.
what I'm saying is like so baffling.
It wasn't mindfulness, it was mindlessness.
Yes.
It was what?
It was
Right.
mindlessness, not mindfulness.
Exactly. It was mindlessness.
Mhm.
But
But it was obviously that she's coming from a fear,
Who knows?
and
yeah.
and she didn't want part of my life.
Yeah, Sita, you just basically summed up the sympathy in the last chapter, right? Because sympathy and fear is based on fear. And she was
Right.
offering her sympathy, but she was afraid of any of that happening to her. So
Yes, and she was afraid of so maybe she had awareness that she didn't want to pity me, so she's giving me the pictures of her own children. Who knows? Who knows what was in her mind? But what I have control over is how am I going to respond to this?
Right.
And how am I going to accept this? Because she's wanting to give me something, for heaven's sakes.
That you don't want.
And here we come back to the
So
part.
this is, to me, this is the big challenges that we have.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I have learned from this and many other things, and like I'm listening to you, Lisa, hear your mom say about all of these woes in the future, and woe this and then woe at that. And this is one thing that Dr. Marshall Rosenberg talks about, is that when you learn how to be compassionate, or empathetic, that you are truly listening. So a person will basically throw you a story, throw you a boulder, and they're just like all over the place. And as you help them like process through, you know, uplifting, then they'll throw you another one and another one and another one. And, you know, like I said before, sometimes I just don't want to be the counselor here. It's like, I don't want to hear one story after another. And people will do this to me and have done more in the past over, and family members, oh my goodness, just on and on and on. And so I have learned how to voice myself. And so one of the good icebreakers is, okay, I really hear you. And what is it that you would like from me? And they're like, oh, wow. You know, we got to somehow figure out how to bring in awareness to what they are doing and to what I am receiving. And maybe I don't want to be receiving it. You know, somehow stay connected with the person, like you're saying, Marie. That's like foremost, is staying connected with that person, and then truly having a conversation. And that is being present, to just listen to the person and their woeful thing, and just like keep, okay, I'm listening, I'm present, I'm listening, I'm present. You know, how much more can we leave, you know, to have interaction and to really connect. And we've got to be careful, because like we say, you know, you're compassionate to one story, they throw you another one. And then all of a sudden, I mean, I've had this happen to me with going for a massage, okay? And the person has come to me for whatever, and the whole time I'm on the table, they're throwing me their boulders.
Been there, done that. Yes, Marilyn.
I think the real key is saying, how can I help you? One of our kids, when they were in elementary school, would come in with an immediate tale of woe. Yeah, you know, everything was awful. And I just started saying, well, how can I help you? So the thing is, people who want to be helped are going to go with that. And it did help. If they're just in a bitching and moaning mood, and everybody is sometimes, they're not going to want to do it with you, because you're bringing some light to it. And if they're not in the mood, you're not going to be the one that they come and do it with, because you're making them a little uncomfortable. So somebody who really wants to stay there, you know, will stay there, but find someone else. And I think it is a great offering. How can I help you? Is the sweetest, sweetest offering, because it kind of cuts through. It doesn't negate their pain. It doesn't, you know, but what's the purpose of this? You know, because I know people who like to go on, and they have absolutely no desire to shift or change. So what's my role in that? You know, I've actually told one friend who does that, when it becomes unhealthy for me to hear you, I know it's unhealthy for you, and the music starts in my head, and I should tell you and be authentic, and we're done, you know. And I think that honesty is really important, but the discernment is as simple as an offering. That offering, like Sita said, is everything. You're going to know right away what's going on with that person. And they might be stymied with it because nobody's offered it and they need it desperately. So it's a very kind act, even if you're looking to separate yourself from somebody who's just wants to complain and nothing else.
What about the person who, and I have a friend like this, who does have a lot of issues, and medical included, and they're legitimate, but they are told over and over and over again in many other conversations, she doesn't want to get off the phone unless it's at least an hour or two. And it's very hard to break in to converse. I have to literally break in because I can't get her to slow down. And I don't understand people like that. I mean, what good does it do her?
I have a technique that I often tell my clients. And when they start with the complaining, and I tell them, just tell the person, hey, I would love to hear what you have to say. I'll give you 10 minutes. After we're done, I'd like to know how you're going to resolve it.
Yeah. And it's not even that she's complaining as much as she is relating story after story after this doctor, that doctor,
Mhm.
whatever else, you know?
Yeah.
So maybe that'll work. I'll try it, but
Mm.
It's just about, I'll give you 10 minutes to hear this out.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
afterwards, I want to know how you're planning to resolve this.
Penny, you
I'm
gotta set-
laughing because, oh boy, I'll try it anyway. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
But it's,
Yeah, Penny, you have to set a boundary there.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is a good boundary. I agree. And you don't really, I don't think she understands that once she gets done doing that, then she starts all over again with the same stuff. You know, that's why the conversation keeps going for so long. And I have to wonder, why am I staying in this friendship? Because I like her, but you know, she's an actress, former actress. So I think the attention is part of it. Needs the attention. Yeah.
Sure.
it's interesting. I have a friend like that. And Janet, Ruth, you haven't met Janet, but she is an integral part of our group. She's not here today.
Mhm.
And we met when some of us were in a group. She was our therapist. And I have a friend who does this quite a bit, the exact same thing. And Janet said, look under personality disorder. And I did. And oh my God, there it was. So I had another conversation with Janet because I was at a point in my life that after, you know, someone being unkind for almost 50 years, I finally decided, okay, we're kind of done with them. And I releasing and just like, I have no angst about it. I'm just done because I can't give it my attention anymore.
Mhm. Mhm.
And Janet said something about, if you can get rid of them, why don't you get rid of the friend with the personality disorder? And I thought that really helped me because the person I was releasing from my life had been purposefully cruel, plotting and planning for years, just always, and with other people too, but extremely unkind. The
Mhm.
person with a personality disorder, I really thought about it. If she had a heart disorder or a broken leg, I wouldn't
Mhm.
dump her. I love who she is underneath it. I really
Yeah.
do. And I've really learned if I have to hold the boundary because she absolutely can't. And I don't invite her to many things anymore. I'll actually do an extra holiday day where she can come because if our kids are here, they'll all leave the table and I'll be sitting with her, and Harry is polite, but she'll go on and on and on. And a lot of our friends here they know who I'm talking about, and I love her and I'm going to keep her. And I made that decision because there's something that isn't wired correctly, but it's also, think about it, it's teaching me, who really has always had boundary issues. I mean, I just, out here spiritually, no problem. I know all the rules for out of body. You don't touch anyone, you just, here on earth, it's a whole other story. I was taught to assume what people need and do it and not pay attention to mine. And if anything was wrong with me, well, somebody else has it worse. I mean, I was brought up on that stuff. But it's interesting. I think you might be keeping her because you love her and you know that the wiring isn't okay. And if it aligns, it took me like, again, I've been friends with this woman for well over 40 years. And it hasn't really, you know, she feels she's changed. She's done a lot of therapy. But like Janet says, you know, personality disorder, it isn't so easy.
No,
So it could be
pretty
something
fixed.
it's something she can't help. I don't have the heart to cut her out because I love her and I know she'd be really hurt by that.
She
But
has
it's
another
she
friend.
need to keep boundaries. Huh?
Mhm.
I was gonna say, she has another friend that she's had for way longer than she's had me, or that I've been friends with her, who just cuts her off and says, I don't want to hear any more stories, you know, before she's even gotten part way into a story. So that person is not compassionate in that sense, you know. Then
My friend has those too.
she likes me because I'm kind to her. She says, be like Penny. She's kind and she listens. But then I think, what a fool I am, because I don't need to listen to all that also, because it does affect me, even though I don't want it to.
I like what
Maybe
Marie
you should
said.
introduce Marilyn's friend to Penny's friend.
Okay. They can tell each other
Yeah.
stories of the cows come home.
Right.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
But I think Marie has hit on something in terms of the boundary and the time. I have this much time because the thing with
Yes.
you can't get on the phone, off the phone.
Yeah.
And I've had to
Yeah,
change
yeah.
that. And a friend of mine who's not in the group, but who's been in therapy for years says, you can train people. You
Yes.
really can train people. And I've been hearing that and it works. And it helps that I love her, but
Mhm.
you know, I'm making the choice. But, yeah. This
Yeah.
is so helpful. All of this is just so helpful. And I'm
Well-
always amazed that all the time we tend to be talking about things that so many of us are needing, whether it's from a book or whether it's just whatever's going on. It's just so nice.
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
And Marie, thanks again for your guidance today and for, tackling the topics at hand. I'll be interested to see how next week goes. I'll even read that chapter before we meet. I want to know how we're going to handle embarrassment and humiliation. So that should be fun. Ladies, I am so happy to see new faces. Yeah, Marilyn.
Oh, little announcement. I have a podcast that's going to be up on Saturday. It's going to be on Mind, Body, Spirit FM. The people who invented Hay House Radio, and that's kind of how podcast happened.
Yeah.
They of course left when Louise sold Hay House, and Hay House is a whole different thing, but Hay House Radio became their biggest thing going on. So the people who did that are doing one with authors with different publishers. They've welcomed in other publishers. And if you have a minute, this is just really interesting because when years ago, after the bulk of the chemo and the cancer stuff, I looked up and said, okay, God, what do I do next? Because I don't know how to hawk myself and I don't advertise. And Mary Beth, who's in the group, who I didn't know yet, emailed the next day and said, I saw you channeling at a party. You want to work and trade? I'm an editor. And the next day, my agent asked to represent me. So a couple months ago, I did the same thing. We've had some health challenges. And we had an important cardiologist appointment for Harry, my husband. And I looked up that morning. I said, okay, that's going to go well. And then God, tell me what to do next. Because once again, second time I'm asking, I don't know what to do. We came out of the cardiologist and we're the cute old people hugging in the hallway because things are looking good and they think we're all cute. We're not even in the car. The phone buzzes in my hand and it's the publisher at Random House. Did you check your email? So these people who created Hay House Radio invited me, since my book is with Random House, to be one of their authors on their thing. So it's interesting because once again, answering the call, Hector, who's Mary Beth's husband, is doing the technical work. So yesterday he helped with and our son did the music. Don't have to worry about copyright that way. So he's doing the final editing. He came and we did a couple of them. So 2 are in the can, and it's cool. They're going to splash it all over whatever social media, which is nothing I would ever do. So people listen if you feel like it.
What time? What time?
Oh no, it's going to be a podcast that's available anytime you want to listen.
Oh,
It has its own app.
Pardon me?
It has its own app.
Okay.
And when did you say it's coming up again?
I start on the launch date is the 15th.
15. Okay.
Talk about not being done yet. I still have so much to do to give them.
Well, you'll get there.
But it's
Can you
happening.
give
And,
us-
the name of
Can
the
you give us the link on the chat?
Sita,
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and track it down and email it out to everybody. So
Yeah, Mind,
Thank
Body,
you.
Spirit
Thank you,
FM. And the name of it is Past, PASSED, Past Yet Present.
Past. Okay.
okay, I'll find
Good
that
luck with that.
Friday and I'll send you all the link.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a new learning curve. It's fun.
And one final thing before we go today, Janet just reached out. Her son tested positive for COVID today. He's been very sick. The problem is that they went and visited the new baby over the weekend. So the family is obviously very, very concerned about the baby. So if you want to send out good vibes for Janet, and good energy, I'm sure she'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
We'll do. For sure.
Well, thank you. It was so nice meeting my new friends.
Nice to meet you as well.
And we'll see you guys next Monday. Thanks, Marie.
Right.
Thanks,
You're
Marilyn.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for welcoming a new person. I appreciate it.
Oh, we're happy.
Me too. It's so good